Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Bryan the Duke Davids. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
What's up, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? This is episode number 43 of the Schmoedown Rundown. My name is Brian Davids, and I'll be your host for this week as Aaron Turner is off on assignment. Joining me as always is the stat lord himself, one of the deepest Chicagoans I know, Mr. Frank Janisch. How's it going, Hodges?
It has been quite a few days since our last episode, if you'll recall.
Feels like it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well, on this special episode, Frank and I will be recapping Robert Meyer Burnett's InnerGeekDom bout with Jay Washington and previewing Friday's team title match between the champion Patriots and Team Modok, the artists formerly known as Rotten Tomatoes. But first, we have a little news that Christian Harloff tried to sneak by my desk right before our recording. So let's get into that.
We interrupt our scheduled programming to bring you this breaking news.
On our last episode, our partner, Aaron Turner, stuck up for Coy Jandreau, and apparently it's paid off as the commissioner woke up this morning and realized that Jandreau's 1-0 record should immediately qualify him to play in the triple threat against Cushing and the winner of Washington and Burnett. So Inman Jandreau is off the table as Inman and Emma Fife is now on the table. The winner will enter a fatal four-way against Jandreau, Cushing, and Washington to determine Nightmare Navarro's spectacular contender. So Frank, despite our attempts to say that Kalinowski's pudding lost the match more than Coy won the match, Coy is now being treated fairly, an argument that Turner tried to make but conceded to you and me. Thoughts?
It's all right to allow Coy back into this, well, now fatal four-way. I think it's interesting that it's going to be Emma and Inman. Somehow he had to figure out to get Inman his shot at this fatal whatever way now. Who knows, by the time we get to this match, it could be 7 people deep. I don't know. He may have sympathy for Robert Meyer Burnett going into this match. So it should be interesting with 4 people. I'm not really too concerned about who I want to win that will win. So it just more people to crush, so to speak.
I was taken aback at first because it didn't seem like Emma would be the next person up. However, when you think about it, Jeremy Johns is taking a break while Kalinowski choked on a pudding pop. So regardless of the Washington Burnett outcome, Robert Meyer Burnett just hasn't played well enough to get yet another shot. Like you said, though, I wouldn't be surprised if Harloff turns this into a fatal 5-way since he loves his mystery wildcards. But despite my initial reaction, Emma getting an opportunity is in fact warranted.
She actually should have advanced past Kalinowski to get to that final round had she not been so quick with her answers. So I think it's a valid opportunity. I'm fine with that ruling that Christian has made.
Now, this is certainly Jason Inman's match to lose, but I like that every InnerGeekDom threat outside of Navarro got an opportunity to eventually face Nightmare Navarro at Spectacular. Whether they seize the opportunity is another thing entirely, but we've seen the best of the rest compete for their shot.
I do really think Emma will put up a pretty good fight against Inman because she shows that if she can get certain categories, she can dominate and roll through if she takes her time, and be very interesting to see if she's learned that lesson going into this match with Inman.
Yeah, she famously jumped the gun on a Harry Potter question, a category she knows quite well, almost to a fault. But But yeah, that's the thing about IGD. If the categories go a certain way, anyone can come out on top. Now, before we get to our featured recap of Robert Meyer Burnett versus Jay Washington, it's time to pay a visit to the Ward Wing.
This is art, Mr. White.
Bryan Ward has done it again, Frank. Our friend and partner is really doing an excellent job of using the Schmoedown drama to inform his artistic choices. James Bond was clearly the story of last week, so what does he do? He uses Robert Meyer Burnett's infamous jacket as his canvas and somehow turned it into the classic James Bond gun barrel from the main title sequence. And who's standing in the crosshairs? It's Jay Washington. Unfortunately, Jay is not short for James, but clearly Ward had the J in mind. So I love that Ward put a target on Burnett's back, only that target is also a gun barrel pointed at Jay Washington, who's pointing a gun back at the target, ready to fire. So Ward's posters, they always look great, but they're also thoughtful. So check out more of Bryan's work at BryanEWard.com and make sure to follow him at BryanEWard on Twitter. Now let's get to our recap of the captain, Robert Meyer Burnett versus Jay the Urban Gladiator Washington. How intimidating does Top Den look as a group, standing all up there? They're like they're like the mafia. They are so intimidating as a group.
Dude, that looked so like WWE to me. I'm going to call them tribe. Their whole tribe right there looked pretty intimidating. And I did find it kind of comical that JTE was barely, I guess, on his tippy toes trying to look over Tom Dagnino. I found that humorous, but it nonetheless was pretty imposing.
Yeah, I loved how Dagnino said he's a December guy and how
he's a Tuesday match. I'm a December guy.
Right. And it looks like Dagnino, he's obviously envious of Robert Meyer Burnett's jacket. He said as much. He loves that jacket. And based on this event, based on this match, it looks like he's trying to match that jacket. He's got his own interesting jacket. Dagnino always bringing it. Jay's stable. They spoke for Jay for the most part, so it was kind of a role reversal for the most part. But then Jay jumped in at the end. And all in all, I think these were some of the best promos that we've ever seen on both sides.
Yes, they were going back at each other, throwing jabs left and right. I think this was some of the more heated promos we've seen between two teams or two individuals. It was really, really fun to watch, and I loved every bit of it when it was over.
Now, as far as the actual entrances, not a lot of flash. Both guys came out rather quietly compared to what we've seen lately. Both were representing their stables, and their stables were representing them quite well.
Yeah, not a whole lot going on there, and I think it's kind of par for the course for the Lions End. They just kind of come out, flash their belts, sit down, and then Tom Dagnino usually says a couple words or two, and that's that. Kind of interesting that 6 Degrees and Jay Washington didn't come up with anything a little more clever than just locking arms, walking out, and a couple kisses on the cheeks, and then that was that. So I thought we might see a little bit something flashier. You know, hey, they were just ready to get down to business.
Jay's stable is saving their budget for the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament, the thousands of dollars they will need for that entire tournament. So I don't blame them for allocating funds for future use.
Fair enough.
Well, round one, question one, Ben Grimm in Fantastic Four, played by one of Christian Harloff's favorite actors, Jamie Bell. Nobody got this, 0-0. Question two, in the Two Towers, Sam wants potatoes. Nobody got that either, 0-0. Question three, another Back to the Future question, Biff's grandson, Griff, 1-0, Jay Washington. Question four, Rose Byrne played a handmaiden of Padme's in Attack of the Clones. Everybody immediately thinks of Keira Knightley since she played the handmaiden decoy doppelganger in Phantom Menace. So kind of a trick question for casual Star Wars fans. Question five, Liam Neeson's initial character name in Batman Begins, Henry Ducard. Nobody got this either, so it's still 1-0 Jay Washington. Question six, Iron Man 2, Tony Stark cures his hangover at a donut shop. Both guys got this 2-1. Jay Washington. Question 7, the Dwarves and Thorns Company, whatever that is. The number was 13. Now it's a 2-2 tie as Burnett ties it up. Question 8, Lucius Malfoy and Harry Potter. That's played by Jason Isaacs. They both missed it, keeping it tied at 2. Question 9, the third Trek film with the Next Generation cast. That's Insurrection. Burnett wasn't going to miss that. Jay missed it, of course. 3-2, Robert. Question 10, The Last Crusade, the vehicle, Rolls-Royce. Nobody got that either. 3-2, Robert Meyer Burnett still. Roger Moore's first Bond film, Live and Let Die. Robert Meyer Burnett and Jay both get it. 4-3, Robert. And question 12, let's hear how that played out.
Final question in round 1, gentlemen. Your 12th question category is DCEU. In Suicide Squad, what does Harley Quinn steal from the store window?
Washington seems to know it. He's trying to tie it up here. Burnett needs to stay ahead to get into that second round. Started off slow, but at least they're coming back towards the end here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Robert Meyer Burnett. Her jacket.
That's incorrect.
Jay.
Personal handbag.
That's correct. Tie game here.
Tie game.
Washington ties it up.
So now it's a 4-4 tie as we set up for round 2. But first, Frank, tell me your thoughts on round 1. This is one of the most anemic round 1s we've ever seen, right?
Yeah, to put it kindly, yeah, this was pretty god-awful. Extremely disappointed at the performance from both players. They've both been touting themselves as future champions, and one was once a champion. Hard to believe watching this first round from Robert Meyer Burnett that he was actually a champion at one point. He missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row before getting that MCU question right. I think that has to be the longest drought of not answering a question in the InnerGeekDom. Don't quote me on that, but I'm fairly confident that's a record, not one you want to have. Keira Knightley is the most of the two decoys. Keira Knightley is the most famous one of them, in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of a difficult Star Wars question if you're not paying attention to the wording. So I can kind of give a pass on that one, but I wasn't surprised Jay Washington got that one wrong. So
really quite a mixed bag of questions in round 1. Pretty bad round, all things considered. But look, very important. The last question tied it up. I've got a very nice theme that I've put together, starting with this question 12. So more on that later. All right, so heading into round 2, we're tied at 4-4. Jay Washington spins Lord of the Rings. Of course, he's not going to take that. He spins again for Spinner's Choice. What does he take? He takes MCU. Question 1. The Bone Collector offers Clark Wolf's favorite MCU character, Gamora, how many units for the orb? Everybody missed it. Still 4-4. The answer was 4 billion. Question 2. The Ancient One calls Caecilius' group what? Jay needs multiple choice. He misses it. Robert steals. The answer is Zealots. 5-4. Robert Meyer Burnett at this point. So question 3. Ant-Man's ant partner, not to be confused with Michael Pena's Luis. This is Anthony. Jay goes up 6-5. Very nice pull. Question 4. Sam Wilson in the MCU plays a pararescuer before he becomes Falcon. I believe that's his name. 8-5, Jay Washington. And question 5. The Mandarin hated the bad taste of fortune cookies. Jay goes up 10-5. That's the end of a 6-point turn for Jay Washington. Robert stole 1 point. So, Frank, give me your thoughts on Jay's turn. This is a pretty good round, all things considered.
It's a pretty decent round considering how he started and didn't get completely taken advantage of with those multiple choice questions. Going towards Robert Meyer Burnett, he was only able to get 1 point. So that's a huge victory in and of itself regarding Jay Washington. He finished strong, getting those last 3 correct for 2 points, all of them. And, Lord of the Rings gets MCU because he got Spinner's Choice. I think as we progress here, we'll find out that was a big determining factor in the results of this match.
So the general rule of thumb, if you spin Spinner's Choice, you want to get 80% or more of the available points. But in this match, getting 60% of the available points is actually a pretty damn good thing for Jay. So it's not a dominant round, but he got enough points to set him up rather nicely for the rest of the match. So let's get to R&B as he spun DCEU. He took it right away. Question 1, What was the sword that Bruce and Diana were looking at in BVS? Robert goes to multiple choice, gets it 10-6 Jay Washington. 4-point lead for Jay, of course. Question 2, Dr. Poison, that nickname in Wonder Woman. He needed multiple choice to get that point, 10-7 Jay Washington. At this point, you're going to start to sense a pattern here. Now, question 3, Clark Kent's friend worked at an IHOP in Man of Steel. Robert also needed a multiple choice to get this. It's now 10-8 to Jay Washington, a 2-point lead at this point. And question 4, let's hear how that played out.
In Suicide Squad, what kind of plush toy does Captain Boomerang keep in his coat?
Multiple choice.
A yellow teddy bear. B, a red dragon. C, a blue turtle. D, a pink unicorn.
A blue turtle.
Ooh.
Incorrect.
A pink unicorn.
One steal there with Jay Washington. That's big.
So now it's 11-8 Jay Washington after that big steal. More on this later. Question 5, Lex Luthor's theory in BVS, that is the meta-human theory. Robert Meyer Burnett again needed multiple choice to get this point. It is now 11-9 Jay Washington. So it's a 4-point turn for Robert Meyer Burnett, plus a 1-point steal from Jay's turn. That's 5 total points in round 2. However, he was ultimately undone by Jay Washington's steal for the pink unicorn question in Suicide Squad, as well as 5 multiple choice requests. I don't know if we've seen this many multiple choice requests before. Actually, I'm sure we have, but this is really, really uncharacteristic of Robert Meyer Burnett. Frank, give me your thoughts on Robert's turn.
Very underwhelming. I mean, he answered 4 out of the 5 correctly, although he did have to go to multiple choice all 5 times. And if you look back at his previous match against Jeremy Johns, he actually went multiple choice 4 out of the 5 times. So I don't know and that was in the Lord of the Rings category that he's fairly decent in, facing Jeremy Johns. Against Jay, though, it gets with DCEU. These are going to be relatively new films like BVS, Suicide Squad, what have you. So it was kind of interesting that his knowledge wasn't as up to date with these movies. And I think we've kind of talked about this in the past, maybe with some other guests, that just because it's a newer movie doesn't necessarily mean you've seen it 10, 20, 30 times like you've seen Superman. So I think there's something to that when you look at Robert Meyer's performance in the DCEU. But if it was something more along the lines of a Marvel category or DC, where it's not so, the movies aren't so recent, he may fare better in something like that. But he did minimize the damage as best as he could in that round. 5 points to Jay's 7, and now he's behind 11-9 in a position I didn't think, and I think many people out there didn't think Robert Meyer Burnett would be in.
Yeah, Jay's steal countered the steal that Robert got during Jay's turn. So the sword question in BVS, question 1, I can see why he got kind of scared, because he thought maybe they were asking for whomever's sword it belonged to. He thought they would want a full answer. So he was being a bit cautious there. Dr. Poison and Wonder Woman, that's a movie that we all have seen by now. That is something that he needs to get. That's recent in his mind. He probably saw it 6 weeks prior to this match's recording. And I'm surprised that they didn't write Denny's in the Clark Kent's friend category, just because Denny's and IHOP are very similar to each other, and yet Denny's was not written as a multiple choice option. My first guess was Denny's, so I would have said Denny's even if it was multiple choice, and I would have been wrong. So I'm very surprised by the lack of inclusion there. Perhaps in Skaliski's part of the country, maybe there are. No, actually, there are Denny's everywhere. What am I saying? But he could have tricked some people, I think, by putting Denny's. But once again, the pink unicorn question in Suicide Squad, I've got more to say on that later. There's a theme. There's a theme. Let's move on to round 3. Jay's up to 11-9. Robert Meyer Burnett is 2-pointer. Indiana Jones's sidekick in Temple of Doom, the prequel, of course, to Raiders of the Lost Ark, my favorite Indiana Jones film, Temple of Doom, that is. And his name was Short Round. That tied things up 11-11. I thought Robert's short round answer would mark the beginning of a wave of momentum leading him to victory, especially when Jay Washington missed his 2-pointer, final destruction of the alliance. Who said it? Palpatine. Jay missed it, so still 11-11 at that point. A surprising miss. I assume you knew this quote, Frank?
Yeah, this dude's driving me nuts in the Star Wars category. It's just, I'll forgive him in that round 1 question, but dude, come on, man. The Alliance, that's Star Wars. Federation's Trek. Come on, man.
Look, I want Jay to succeed, so hopefully he brushes up on Star Wars. I know he's been working his butt off since his last match forever ago against Android, but we got to get him rounded in Star Wars because clearly he appears to be lacking a little bit there.
I would say.
But Robert Meyer Burnett is 3-pointer. Billy Crudup as Dr. Manhattan, not Billy Crudup, as Robert said, as a lot of people mispronounce that name. 14-11, Robert Meyer Burnett at this point. Aaron Turner would be proud, though, that he got this right, of course. Aaron Turner, big Watchmen fan. And now on to Jay Washington's 3-pointer. Guess what rears its ugly head once again? James Bond as James Bond Day at the Schmoedown continues. What does Q stand for? Jay asked for a repeat. It stands for quartermaster. He missed it. RMB maintains his 3-point lead over Jay, 14-11. And then Jay Washington's 5-pointer. Let's hear how that went.
5-point question. In Suicide Squad, what was written on Harley Quinn's bat?
Good night.
That's correct.
Oh, that is it. Look at that.
So Jay Washington takes the lead 16-14 on Harley Quinn's bat slogan, Good Night in Suicide Squad. More on that later. Now it's up to RMB's 5-pointer to win him the match or lose him the match. What does he draw? Much like Killer Kalinowski, he draws scores in soundtracks. So much like the Cushing-Kalinowski match, a lot of the same round 3 categories were drawn only on opposite sides. Jay got James Bond, Robert got scores and soundtracks. Of course, Killer got both of them in his round 3. So interesting similarities there. Who's the composer for the amazing Spider-Man 2? No one's going to get that. Robert Meyer Burnett missed it. Of course, it was James Horner. So Jay Washington upsets Robert Meyer Burnett 16-14, something nobody saw coming but me. Frank, what are your thoughts on this match?
Jay Washington's performance reminds me of a certain Monday night back in October of 2006. And it reminded me specifically of one of the more iconic press conferences we've seen after a football game. And it was Dennis Green of the Arizona Cardinals talking about my Chicago Bears at the time, claiming they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
Jay Washington is who I thought he was when I talked about what I was looking at in regards to his performance last week on the show. He gave me exactly what I thought I would get. Instead, what happened was Robert Meyer Burnett played down to a level that I did not think he would play to again. Jay is who I thought he was.
Now, we were lucky enough to catch up with Jay Washington after his big upset win. Here's what he had to say.
My name is the Urban Gladiator Jay Washington, and I come to you as the victorious one who made a glorious debut over one Robert Meyer Burnett in the InnerGeekDom match. And I know it hurts a lot of hearts, a lot of feelings, more specifically on the Schmoedown Rundown, one Frankie Stats Janisch. Yeah, Frankie, you needed to see something. You needed to be proven better than proving that I could win and that I could beat Burnett. And you were bringing up all of these numbers. Well, the last time you had your match with Draco, you only answered this many questions, and they gave you a percentage. Guess what? Your percentages and stats have no meaning and no real substance when at the end of the day, I still have the W, and that makes you a bigger loser than Tom Dumnino. Speaking of Dumnino, now he has to cry and talk about some, oh, these questions were fixed, and they were just against the Lions then, and the Lions then, and I still got the Patriots, and then I got Grace, and I got Draco, but I got everybody trying to make me feel bad. You'll take your ass on somewhere. The fact that Dumnino and the fact that Janisch, you all try to make him commissioner. How about you commission him to go to rehab and make everybody's life a whole lot better? Now, I understand you're hurt. I understand to a lot of the fans of the Schmoedown Rundown, you don't understand and how to believe it. But guess what you get to believe? That Robert Meyer, Bernett, and InnerGeekDom is now 1-3. Do you know what that means? He will not be going for the title. That means there is no tomorrow Navarro. It means tomorrow won't come and you get to die another day, or anything else, any little cliche I can use at the moment. But it doesn't matter. The fact that matters is this: I go into now the fatal 4-way for to challenge Hector Navarro for the InnerGeekDom title. And now people are going to say, oh, Rachel Cushing's going to crush you. No. That's not going to happen. Because just as I shocked the world when I beat Burnett, I can do double and twice and more and make it as nice when I shock the world and beat Rachel Cushing and then beat the winner of now what's turned out to be Jason Emmon and Emma 5 and added it to the match Koi Jandrew. So yeah, if I shock the world once, I can do it again. And I can even keep riding and bringing along 6 degrees with me as they transcend and elevate throughout the team tournament. So you know what? At the end of the day, for everyone who's hating and everyone who's upset, there is only 2 things you can absolutely do about it, and that's nothing and deal with it. Damn it.
Frank, I would say that you upset the man.
Okay.
Well, moving to the post-interview discussion, as well as our overall thoughts still, I played 3 clips during this match for a reason, because they prove ultimately why Jay Washington won this match. That reason is Suicide Squad. In each round, Jay got a Suicide Squad question that proved to be decisive in this match. He tied the match to end round 1 via Harley's handbag theft. He stole RMB's Pink Unicorn question for a point in round 2, and his round 3 5-pointer, What's Written on Harley's Bat, ultimately said goodnight to Robert Meyer Burnett.
Now, did you think Jay's 5-point question was worthy of 5 points?
Absolutely not. I mean, it was a very easy question. I can imagine some people getting tricked up and saying the slogan on her baseball t-shirt, which was what, Daddy's Little Monster or something. So I can see some people confusing the two.
Look, I haven't even seen Suicide Squad. I don't have
wait, hold the phone.
I have more valuable things to do with my time. Okay.
But still, you follow the movie space, you follow Collider and all these things.
True.
How have you not seen this movie?
It's literally sitting in my room waiting to be watched. I just haven't gotten myself to that low of a point yet.
But you were at a low enough point to give them your money. This kind of reminds me of Harloff's The Thing Blu-ray, which has been sitting on his shelf next to Two for the Money for years and years. It actually may have been a gift from JTE, if I remember correctly, but of course that's a good movie.
What I was going to say is, I knew the answer to this question because if you had merely watched or followed any of the marketing campaign material, you saw Harley Quinn's bat quite a lot, and you could see it says goodnight. So his James Bond question could have been a 5-pointer, and this question, the Harley Quinn question, could have been the 3-pointer. I think I would have been okay with that.
Now, the question difficulty is supposed to increase. The degree of difficulty is supposed to increase with each point value increase, but lately there's been a lot of debate. Of course, it's subjective to every person, but there's been a lot of questions that are being argued about more so than usual. Jeff Snyder fired a shot saying that was a ridiculous 5-pointer, the Harley Quinn bat question, but it is what it is. Robert Meyer Burnett, when it comes down to it, he did not play well. This is not a good performance by a player that we know is much better than this. And I hope he can get his mojo back, because we've seen him when he's on. He's one of the best players in the league for sure. I think he's yelling too much. He said so. He wants to tone it down, supposedly. I think he exhausted himself prior to this match by yelling all of those now famous Hector Navarro taunts. Unfortunately, it cost him against Jay Washington, as the catchphrase is now 1 year tomorrow, Navarro, since that's the earliest we'll see a potential Burnett-Navarro rematch. By the time he played Jay, I think Robert was just exhausted. So it's not an excuse, but it certainly plays into things. And of course, he said he was going to tone back on the yelling, but what did he do to close out his post-interview? He yelled at Navarro once again. So I don't know if he's learning from his mistakes or not, but it's worth pointing out. I got to say something. There were a lot of R&B as old jokes. That's ageism, of course. That's got to stop. I'm not a huge PC guy or anything, but to give the guy a hard time based on his age, I can understand making a crack, but when you're making 4 or 5 jokes, that's a little much for me. For me, overall, we don't need to be doing that unless it involves teenage players like Cody Hall.
Right. The thing with the age thing, these jokes, it's not funny anymore because Robert Meyer Burnett is playing into them now, as we heard in his post-match interviews. So he's kind of taking that away from them or from anybody who tries to use it because he's owning it.
Well,
and so, but I also agree with your point. We don't really need that, but Robert Meyer Burnett's doing his own thing to kind of curb it as well.
He took the ageism smack talk in stride by saying the nursing home that he goes to or lives at has a giant supercomputer. But I do think we need to avoid this sort of thing because I don't think anyone likes being reminded that they're old. And he's not the only player that this happens to in the league. So there's a better way to do this. And JTE proved it when he fired off a great line by saying that Jay is like radiation.
Oh, yeah.
Once you're exposed, you start to suck. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but this is great smack talk without getting too personal. Jay is like radiation. Once you're exposed, you start to suck. So that's a perfect example of the kind of smack that I like that does not zero in on an attribute or a trait of that particular person. Another thing we heard was the captain and the android pumping themselves up for teams. I almost forgot these guys were a team because we've had so many transactions lately. Of course, they'll be playing Heroes 2.0, John Schnepp and Hector Navarro on August 30th. So I'm still very curious about what this team can do. Android was quite confident that he'd be able to answer the questions that Robert did not know in this particular singles match, but people say that all the time whenever they're on the sideline. But Robert was not happy, though, that his 3 wins earned with Team Heroes are not carrying over to his new team. He feels that those wins were earned by him and him alone. And while he's correct to a point, Schnepp has every right to retain those 3 wins because he is still on Team Heroes. So I get why Robert's upset, but if Robert wanted to protect those wins, he should not have done something without his partner's approval first or blessing first.
Well, I gotta say something to that because it's really Schnepp who left Heroes. It's not Robert Meyer Burnett who left Heroes. It's Schnepp who decided he did not want to be partners with Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert Meyer Burnett had been there for every single match, unlike Schnepp. So if we're going on terms of who played in how many matches, really the ownership of Heroes belongs to Robert Meyer Burnett, if you're asking me. So he does have a bit of a gripe to say that his wins were stripped. However, he is now part of a new team. Even if you have the same team name, I still think those losses should go away, but he should be able to have some sort of leg to stand on when he wants to argue that his wins were taken away. I kind of see it in that direction.
I get that argument because Robert had to play with fill-in players because Schnepp was gone so much. But at the same time, Team Heroes was named after Schnepp's show that Robert is a guest host on.
Yeah.
He's a regular guest host, of course, but ultimately the name came from John Schnepp. He's got ownership over Heroes because it's based on his show. So it's crazy to think that Team Heroes was once playing the Nerds Watch to be the #1 contender in this Friday's team title match.
Yeah.
And my last takeaway from this match is something that we've talked about before, and that's Jay's stable using their catchphrase as often as possible to close out promos, to close out post interviews. So, Frank, once again, Brian David's advice continues to rub off on this entire league.
Well, I like the way that they used it. Use it in a very effective manner and don't just throw it out there haphazardly. That's kind of how I'm evolving my opinion on it now.
That is our InnerGeekDom recap of Jay Washington and Robert Meyer Burnett. It wasn't pretty, but it's still damn entertaining.
That for sure it was.
Well, moving to our team title match preview, Team Patriots, the Schmoedown's greatest championship entity, are facing off against Team Modok. Once again, the artist formerly known as Rotten Tomatoes. Now, some of you might be thinking, didn't the Patriots just defend their title 5 weeks ago on the 4th of July? The answer is, of course they did. Frank, I even asked Jeff Snyder about why their title defenses are so close in proximity, and he said There's no hiding from this, son. We have a job to do, end quote. Now, Frank, you were at the 4th of July team title match between the Patriots and Top 10, as well as Collider Collision, and you spoke to a bunch of competitors there. What ended up happening to everyone you spoke to?
Well, it's not something I like to go back and revisit, but if I do recall correctly, everyone that I talked to lost.
Now, there was one person who had the wherewithal to not speak to you because of your Top 10 fandom. How did that person fare in their match?
Going to talk to JTE, and then, he found out my Top 10 allegiance, which does still stand to this day. And when he found that out, he abruptly did an about face and walked away from me. So there's that. And then he ended up retaining the title with Jeff Snyder's help.
So since you're trying to muddy the waters, let's recap. The people you spoke to, they lost. And the people that refused to speak to you, they won. Now let's clarify. Who is that person again that refused to speak to you?
He goes by the name of Little Evil, JTE.
That's right, folks, JTE. And guess what? I managed to sit down with him for a few minutes to discuss the Patriots' upcoming title match against Team Modok. He agreed to speak to me and me alone, since it's well established where my loyalties lie and where Frank Janish's loyalties lie, unfortunately. All right, I'm pleased to welcome one half of the reigning team champions, the Patriots, as well as an integral member of the Lion's Den, the most successful stable in Schmoedown history. Of course, I'm talking about JTE. How the heck are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Pretty pumped up for this match. I will say this, I kind of thought maybe we'd be facing Ken and Rachel's team, the Knights of something. They're not important enough for me to remember. Rotten Tomatoes really pulled through, and I was in the audience, and I was pretty shocked. I thought Night's Watch had it. But you got to give Rotten Tomatoes respect. I've known Gray and Matt especially for a few years now. Matt I've known off and on since, but really not as much as I knew Gray. And I know Gray, she's a wild card. Her personality is a wild card. She's one of my favorite people, but she's a wild card in this game. You never know what she's going to pull out.
Well, JTE, why are the Patriots always pushed back into battle before every other title holder?
I would love to know the answer to that question, Brian. I think it comes down to they don't want us to be champions, so they're throwing everyone they can at us, giving us title matches more than I think any other champion. But, it doesn't matter. No matter who they throw at us, we knock them out of the way.
Team Modok, the artists formerly known as Rotten Tomatoes, they've been Schmoedown staples for quite a while. They've been a part of several thrilling matches.
Mm-hmm.
Have you given them a second thought, or are you not even phased at this point?
It's funny. The people you think are going to sometimes give you a harder match, sometimes you end up destroying them. Top 10. We wiped the floor with them last time, and honestly, on paper, that's the match I thought would be a close one. And then I thought we were going to destroy Team Trek. I didn't think they were on our level, but it just goes to show you never know, man. They came real close. We went to overtime. I was shocked. That was the biggest thing after that match. I was like, wow, did not expect to go to overtime with Team Trek. But, that's the way this game is built. You never quite know what's going to happen, what category you're going to get. The luck of the draw is a big factor in this game, but it helps to know as much as you can.
JTE, 11 months ago, I talked to you a couple days before the Patriots first debuted. At the time, I said you had belts in your future, but everybody said I was on bath salts at the time. So fast forward 11 months, can you believe that you're part of the most dominant championship entity the Schmoedown has ever seen?
I don't want to say surprised. The thing is, once I met with Jeff and we really started getting a feel for each other's game, and once I realized what his strengths was and mine were, I knew we would have a long, long run. Honestly, I don't think we've fought a team yet that's worthy of the championship belts. You never know. Somebody might come up and be one of those teams. There's some new teams forming lately, and I'm like, these guys are literally being put together to try to take out the Patriots. And I got to say, I'm feeling pretty confident. But back in the day, once I actually started doing matches with them, I was like, I don't think we're going to lose anytime soon.
How do you pump yourself up for a title match when you've won so many title matches at this point? Is your competitive fire just as strong as it's ever been?
I think when you think of the greats like Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, they're never satisfied with how many Super Bowl rings they have or how many championship trophies they're hauling. When you're just as thirsty for the next one as you are for the one you have, and again, we still have the belts, we never lost them. but I ain't looking to lose them. And I take every match very seriously, and I feel pretty good that we've had it this long.
I gotta ask, when we talked 11 months ago, I talked to you about Josh McCouga's method of stalling for more time, including his countless repeat requests. I even encouraged other players like yourself to adopt McCouga's strategy for stalling, and yet several months later, to counter this strategy, the league created a repeat request rule after you, not McCouga. So why did you let your name get attached to this rule?
Like I said, when great players come along to change the game, I do think when it comes down to it, the reason why I repeat questions is because I'm a more visual kind of guy. Like, I learn visually. And what you guys at the audience, you get to see it in text. I think that's a huge advantage for you playing at home. When you're sitting there and have to listen to every word, one little word could change your answer. So I always ask for a repeat, not because I was stalling time, but because I wanted to make sure I got the question completely. I've seen people say the wrong thing because they misheard a word or two. And that's why I do it. And I think that was a great strategy. McCouga, like you said, probably just do it because he goes, I can't remember this line. And even so, there's times where, like, I know the actor and I can't quite remember their first or last name. And that will be times where I use the repeat rule, the JTE rule, as you will say.
Still, McCouga used to do this far more than you ever did, and yet they named the rule after you. I just feel like they're trying to capitalize on your name.
People just don't tune into McCouga matches as much, I think, as mine. And so, I mean, the more famous person is going to get the tag.
JTE, people love to call the Patriots heels, yet you guys usually show sportsmanship by hugging your opponents, shaking hands, and kissing babies after your matches. You also don't talk during your opponent's wheel rounds like Top 10 did to you on the 4th of July.
No class.
Is the Patriots heel label somewhat misunderstood or exaggerated from your perspective?
Let's talk about the NFL Patriots. I love that team more than anything. When people are like, I hate the Patriots, I legitimately can't understand why they hate them. And I think that's what it's like when people say they hate the Patriots in the Schmoedown. I don't get it. You watch the matches. We're the best team in the history of the league. We have great on-mic skills. So when people say that we're heels, I just think they're jealous. I mean, for me, it just shows how petty they are.
You recently put down Fredo Knapsack in singles. Where is your head at when it comes to singles right now?
I'm excited for the Ultimate Schmoedown. I'm hoping to really put myself back into the championship circle. People, here's the thing. People see records, and they think that tells the whole story. Every time I've lost a match, whether it be a championship match to Mark Riley or a match to McCouga or anybody else, it was always by the last question, and it was usually because of circumstances. It wasn't like, oh my God, he just missed the easiest question. Mike Tyson knocks out, 50 people in a row, but then he fights a guy that takes him to the last round and he wins by decision. People want to jump him in with a bunch of those other people got knocked out. Just not the way it is. I feel like I'm one of the best fighters in the league. I've shown it. I fought the best. And the people I've lost to, like Clark Wolf, Mark Riley, I really lost either on the last question or because Riley gets Star Wars and I get romantic films. If you notice, every time the Patriots put the belt on the line, we get to choose whether or not we get opponent's choice and spinner's choice on the wheel. And every single time we make sure that's taken off the wheel because we don't want people to beat us with any, little superpower effects from the wheel. We want you to beat us with your pure movie knowledge. It's worked for us so far.
Lastly, what do you want to say to the Schmoedown fans who are rooting against the champion Patriots versus Modok?
Keep rooting against us. Every time you guys root against us, it just gives us more fuel to prove you wrong. And you can only be in denial for so long. For those of you who don't think we're the best in the league, the best champions, you're just in denial. It's proof now. For me to say, Michael Jordan's not the best basketball player, you got to put some stats up against him, LeBron's better. No, I'm sorry. Look at the numbers. Look at the history. We're the best. If you think any differently, then you're just being prejudiced.
Folks, you can find JTE on the Movie Trivia Schmoedown as well as the Schmoes Know live show on occasion. Of course, you're engineering by day at Screen Junkies. Where else can people find more of you and your work?
Find me on Twitter at JTE Movie Thanks. I don't really use Instagram, but I have one with the same name. And you can catch me on my own YouTube channel, JT Movie Thanks. I just did a really fun interview with Michael Rooker of Guardians of the Galaxy fame. I know him more from Cliffhanger. It was a really fun interview, and I got to really kind of geek out. Check it out on my YouTube channel, JTE Movie Thinks.
That was one of the funniest videos I've seen in quite a while. So folks, check that out at JTE Movie Thinks on YouTube. Check out his Twitter at the same name. JTE, good luck this Friday against Team Modok. They're going to need it. And thanks for stopping by the Schmoedown Rundown.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for believing in the Patriots and me. You're a smart man.
I hope everyone enjoyed JTE's thoughts on the upcoming match against Team Modok. Before we get to our Patriots Modok preview, let's listen to a short ad for the Schmoes Know iTunes feed.
We interrupt this amazing episode of the Schmoedown Rundown to bring you this news. Do you like what you've heard so far? Do you like the Schmoedown Rundown? And of course, why wouldn't you? Do us a favor. If you are listening on iTunes, please rate and review the show along with all the other shows on the Schmoes Know feed. If you are watching via YouTube on the SK Plus channel, be sure to like and leave a comment. We would really appreciate that, and it will help out all the other shows on the channel, such as Outlaw Nation with John Roca, the Harloff Podcast with Christian Harloff, The Wanger Show, among the rest of the shows on the channel. Something new for everybody every single day, so definitely check out the SK Plus feed and the Schmoes Know iTunes feed. And now back to the best looking host on the channel, Aaron Turner.
All right, Frank, it is championship preview time. Let's get to our preview of Patriots versus Team Modok, the artist formerly known as Rotten Tomatoes. Who you got?
I'm going to take the Patriots. I've seen them in person, and they are damn impressive. They are no joke. Likewise, Rotten Tomatoes, no joke either. I saw them in person as well, taking on Nerds Watch at Collision. But I'm going to take the Patriots. They are just on a roll. JTE, he's coming off a great run in his team performances. He really just meshes well with Jeff when he's up there with him, and he's been getting stronger and stronger as this incredible run has continued for them. To go 7-0 is mind-boggling, considering the teams they are now getting to face, like Top 10, now Rotten Tomatoes. They're taking on the best of the best right now that the league has at the moment. And I know a certain other team that's been critically acclaimed is on their way, but right now we're looking at Modok, and I'm still going to take Patriots, and I think it's going to be a very close one because these teams this season each are 3-0. They're very, very similar in terms of points scored, which matters a lot. Although Patriots has a little bit higher of an answer percentage, I'm not sure how that's going to factor out because when the points are on the line, JTE has shown up, Jeff Snyder has shown up, and Gray Drake is kind of a liability for Matt Atchity. She's a good player, and she can show up in big moments, but it is kind of spotty. But that's why I'm going to go with the Patriots because I'm going to have to pick them until they lose, obviously. It just makes sense that way to me.
I love how difficult that was for you. It brings me great pleasure. Now, I used to say that Team Rotten Tomatoes was my favorite Schmoedown team. However, now that their team name has morphed into Team Modok, I'm beginning to doubt their ability to serve up fresh performance after fresh performance, especially when going up against the greatest championship force the Schmoedown has ever seen, Team Patriots. This could be the fourth title defense by the Patriots if they win. That's astonishing considering they formed just 11 months ago. One thing is certain, this will be a thriller of a match if Modok in the Patriots' history is any indication. Modok recently beat Nerds Watch and IGN at the buzzer. Rest in peace, IGN. At Spectacular, the Patriots beat Top 10 by 1 to claim the belts, and then they won by 1 point in each of their defenses against teams Trek and Wolves of Steel. However, when the Patriots last defended against Top 10 on the 4th of July, it was their most dominant title defense so far. And what's working against Rotten Tomatoes is that they lost to Bottom 10 by 2 points back in September 2016, despite being one of the greatest team matches ever played if not the greatest. And when you consider the blown call that IGN suffered against Rotten Tomatoes, IGN should have beaten them too. So that's why I'm picking the Patriots, no surprise, to defend for a record 4th consecutive time, as they've twice handled a team that has beaten Modok once already. I can't say it enough. I'm so glad that I was alive during the Bulls and Patriots dynasties. It's a great time for all Schmoedown fans, but it's an even better time for Patriots fans. Well, Frank, let's close things out until Saturday. We're going to recap this very title match and preview next week's match or matches. Frank, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at FrankieJ29, and do check my Twitter or even the Facebook Movie Trivia Schmoedown Facebook page. I'm going to be dropping some stat nuggets about Modok, aka Rotten Tomatoes, and the Patriots as we lead up to this historic title match.
Of course, you can follow me, Bryan Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at filmschlubspodcast.com or wherever podcasts are found. Again, thank you to Brian Ward at Brian E. Ward on Twitter for his artwork contributions. And make sure to follow the show at SD Rundown, as well as our absent host, Aaron Turner, at AT Titanium. On behalf of Frank Janisch and Aaron Turner, this is Bryan Davids signing off for Schmoedown Rundown number 43.